Exposed, how one woman's amazing transformation from rejection to success left him in shock. Sarah sat at her tiny kitchen table, old receipts and crumpled sketches spread out before her like a collection of lost dreams. Each piece of paper told a story, a child's laughter here, a sunset's glow there, and now they felt like a mockery. The letter from the Midwest Art Academy lay beside her, the words "we regret to inform you" echoing in her mind like a persistent drum. That rejection felt heavier than the weight of her responsibilities as a single mother, stretching her heart to its limits. Despair started to seep into her veins, coiling around her dreams like a predator waiting to strike. Thoughts raced through her mind, questioning her worth. Had she misled herself? Was she foolish for thinking an art career could weave through her life's chaos? The fear of failure clenched her stomach, twisting it tight. She glanced out the window at the park across the street, where families enjoyed laughter and togetherness, each painted happiness haunting her fragile heart. She felt a deep anger toward Mr. Thompson, her high school art teacher. His dismissive words still stung. "Not everyone is meant to be an artist, Sarah." That doubt echoed louder than the chirping birds just outside. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Stepping into the waking world outside her cramped apartment, Sarah felt each step resonate against the pavement, a reminder of how far she had come, even if the journey felt painfully incomplete. The summer sun poured its warmth onto her skin, yet her heart remained cold and overshadowed. Her children, with their innocent chatter, were her little anchors, but the turmoil within her swelled. She began to sketch again, her pencil dancing across the canvas of empty walls, a vibrant mural blossoming in the local park where every stroke felt like both an act of rebellion and vulnerability. As her creations drew curious crowds, whispers crept into her consciousness. Recognition, a taste she craved and feared in equal measure. She remembered her late-night shifts, the diner's fluorescent glare stinging her eyes as she juggled orders and wild hopes. But now, as people complimented her work, a flicker of hope ignited, warming her spirit. Still, shadows loomed. The betrayal threw her thoughts into disarray, her close friend taking her designs, claiming them as her own in a budding gallery. How could someone she trusted stab her in the back? Anger boiled within her, yet, beneath it lay a sickening doubt. Was she worthy of her own success? What if this was all for nothing? The internal battle raged on as anxiety settled in, whispering that perhaps she deserved this pain. Should she confront her friend, or would that open new wounds? The day of her confrontation with Mr. Thompson approached like a storm on the horizon. Would she stand before him, the girl he once deemed unworthy, or retreat back into the shadows of self-doubt? Anxiety clawed at her resolve, her heart raced, caught in a web of fear and burgeoning hope. As the weight of expectation closed in, Sarah found herself standing at an impossible crossroad. Would she find validation or become entrapped in a cycle of anguish, forever haunted by her past? The answer lingered just out of reach, intensity thick in the air, leaving her poised on the brink of a choice that could shift everything. The air in the coffee shop felt thick with unspoken words as Sarah waited for Mr. Thompson to arrive. She could hear her heart pounding in her ears, the anticipation making her skin prickle uncomfortably. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the elegant line of her latest sketch, now folded and resting in her bag for leverage. It represented not just her artistic prowess but a defiance against the voice that had once dismissed her dreams. With every breath, she reminded herself that she was not the girl he tried to define but a woman ready to reclaim her identity. When the door swung open, a wave of nerves washed over her. Mr. Thompson strode in, his familiar silhouette making her stomach twist. He hadn't changed much, the same gray suit clinging awkwardly to his frame. She'd rehearsed this encounter 1,000 times in her mind, picturing his reaction, the way he'd respond to her confrontation. Yet as he approached, all those rehearsed lines slipped away, and instead she felt the surge of all the moments he had belittled her art. Sarah, he said, surprise flickering across his features. There was a brief moment when she noticed the hint of pride that replaced his initial shock. Did he recognize her talent, or was it merely the concept of seeing a former student succeeding? Mr. Thompson, she replied, steadying her voice. Thank you for meeting with me. She could feel the weight of her words as they hung between them, a fragile thread tethering her to her resolve. They settled at a small table, the din of coffee grinders and mild chatter melting into the backdrop of her inner turmoil. Small talk came easily to him, but she focused on the fire burning within her. I wanted to talk about something important, she began, heart racing as vulnerability washed over her. About your class and your belief in my future as an artist. I assumed you'd moved on from that phase, he replied nonchalantly, yet his eyes narrowed, sensing the tension. I haven't. I've been creating. Actually, I've started a new project, she continued, pulling the folded sketch from her bag. She laid it on the table, the drawing of a mural, color bursting from the page. This is what I've been working toward. His expression shifted as he scanned the artwork. For a fleeting moment, surprise flickered again before his features hardened into something she couldn't quite decipher. It is impressive, he admitted begrudgingly. But you always said I wasn't good enough. Those were just words, Sarah. I didn't mean what? She interrupted, her voice rising involuntarily. Didn't he mean to crush the spirit of a young artist? That words matter less than recognition. The dam she created around years of suppressed emotions began to crack, and she realized she was done with allowing others to define her. What's the point of this? He retorted, his frustration evident. To prove something to me? Or to yourself? Both. With determination, she leaned closer, eyes locking with his. I am not here for your approval, but to reclaim my voice. You of all people should understand that. Each stroke of paint I lay down is not just art, it's my survival. The silence that followed was ripe with tension, her breath shallow as she braced herself for his response. The truth hung in the air, heavy with unfulfilled expectations, fear, and a flicker of empowerment. I was wrong about you, he mumbled finally, disappointment etched in his features. You've more talent than I ever recognized. The sudden admission felt like an unexpected balm on her raw wounds. Yet, as the moment lingered, she couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that accompanied that validation. Was this enough? Just then, her phone buzzed loudly, disrupting the charged atmosphere. The screen displayed a notification, a photo of her former friend showcasing her work with the label Original Design, Sarah's design. Her heart dropped, anger and betrayal battling for dominance in her focus. She clenched her fists under the table, sensing the storm brewing inside her. The path had just become clearer, it was time to confront the theft of her artistry and claim what was rightfully hers, not just from her friend but from herself. As she stood up abruptly, the conversation with Mr. Thompson now feeling both insignificant and transformative, she held on to her commitment. It wasn't about proving others wrong anymore, it was about crafting her future without shadows lurking behind. Thank you for your time, Mr. Thompson. I have to go now. There is more I need to do, more to reveal. The door swung shut behind her, and with each step down the street, the resolve deepened. She had a battle to fight, a true fight against not only betrayal but her own fear of just how far she could push her limits. Tomorrow would be different, not just for her but for every ounce of talent she refused to bury again. She took a deep breath, the weight of betrayal fueling her journey ahead. Amidst the uncertainty, she was determined to reclaim her voice one way or another. And just as she found her footing, a new challenge emerged on the horizon. Would it be enough to face both her friend and the world watching? The morning light streamed through the blinds, illuminating the chaos of Sarah's studio. Canvases piled against the wall, paint tubes scattered like forgotten dreams. Each splatter of color echoed her turmoil, mirroring the tempest within. Today was the day she would confront the betrayal that threatened to strip away her emerging confidence, and she felt both exhilarated and terrified. She pulled out the sketch she had shared with Mr. Thompson, placing it on her easel. It served as a reminder of the power she had claimed, the power to wield her creativity. Yet the image of her former friend's mocking bravado loomed over her like a shadow. Each moment they had shared felt tainted now, steeped in a bitterness that circulated through their shared memories. That friendship had brought warmth, but betrayal had marred that warmth into something jagged and cold. A deeper anger began to simmer as she thought about how easily her design had been taken. It was not just the theft of an idea, it was an infringement on her identity. She reached for her brush and began to paint over the canvas before her, blending bold strokes that mirrored her determination and frustration. Art had always been her sanctuary, now, it would also be her weapon. As she painted, Sarah felt a surge of clarity. Each stroke resonated with the enormity of her mission, a visual articulation of her struggle against mediocrity. This mural wasn't merely a piece of art, it was a declaration, a commitment to herself and to everyone who had ever doubted her. The colors surged under her command, vivid and fierce, each hue spiraling into a testament of her journey. Time slipped away as creativity took the reins, and soon she drew closer to the unveiling that would mark her confrontation. For too long, she had waited for validation from others, especially those who sought to undermine her. Today, she would reclaim not only her design but the narrative that surrounded it. Mid-afternoon, Sarah saved the last brushstroke, stepping back to scrutinize her work. A wave of pride washed over her, the mural pulsed with life, displaying an explosion of textures and colors that beckoned more meaning than mere aesthetic beauty. It was bold, unrepentant, and entirely her own. She reveled in the thought of sharing it, claiming her identity in the most public of ways. She glanced at her phone, half expecting another reminder of her betrayal, yet it was a message from another ally, a fellow artist she had connected with in the last few months. They were keen to visit, eager to see her new work. The timing felt significant, as if the universe was aligning to support her rebirth from a place of doubt. On the verge of an emotional breakthrough, she paused, contemplating the ramifications of her decision. Would this public display of her work serve as a confrontation? Would her friends see it and realize the magnitude of her actions? The thrill of creating was countered by the apprehension of exposure. Her inner dialogue nagged at her. Was art meant for catharsis or confrontation? In that very moment, Sarah resolved her internal conflict. The art would speak for her. It would be a mirror reflecting not merely her talent but her unwavering resolve to emerge unscathed from pain. She drafted a plan. She would add social media promotion to announce her mural unveiling, inviting everyone, even her betrayer, to witness her emergence. The realization was electrifying. She needed to share her work with the world, not just to challenge her friend but to declare to herself that she was unapologetically an artist, one who would no longer be subject to the judgment of others. As Sarah locked her phone after sending out the invites, her heart raced with uncertainty. The clock was ticking, and she had only a short time before the confrontation she anticipated. Would they accept her true self, or would they recoil in shame? Determined, she whispered to herself, "Today, I'll face them all." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her facade of confidence. How would she react when the moment arrived? The suspense whispered around her, leaving a mix of excitement and unease lingering in the air. Tomorrow would bring revelations, not just of her talent, but also of the depths she had yet to explore. The time to break free from the chains of betrayal was upon her. Would she emerge victorious, or would the past continue to haunt her novel beginning? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across her studio, Sarah stood before the mural, the crimson and cobalt hues still bright in her mind. She felt an electric charge beneath her skin, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling within her. Tomorrow marked a pivotal moment in her transformation, one that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She poured herself into her work, but the thought of others viewing it, especially those who had belittled her, invoked a storm of anxiety. In the quiet solitude of the evening, Sarah reflected on her recent journey. Using art as her voice had unshackled a part of her that had long lain dormant. Yet, doubt crept back in, whispering that the struggle was far from over. She created something meaningful, but was it enough to confront the ghosts of her past? The unmistakable chime of her phone interrupted her thoughts. A message from her artist friend, Elena, reminded her of the support that had begun to surround her. The anxiety felt heavier now. While she appreciated the encouragement, the weight of others' expectations brought new pressure. What if her mural didn't resonate? What if it failed? Sarah paced the small space, tapping her fingers nervously against her thighs. Each step around the studio echoed her internal conflict. She found herself drawn to her old sketchbooks, filled with fragments of ideas, aborted concepts. Many pages echoed dreams she had yet to realize. As she flipped through the worn pages, a feeling of resolve surged within her. Each misstep marked a lesson learned, each rejection a building block towards the artist she was embracing today. She picked up a smaller canvas, intending to paint her feelings. The first stroke was tentative, whispering to her past insecurities, reminding her of moments when she felt unseen and unheard. She hesitated but then pressed harder, the brush gliding across the surface, transforming tentative strokes into fervent lines of color. Each hue became a fierce declaration of self-worth, a reflection of her perseverance. Sarah felt her heart rate quicken as she approached the canvas with renewed vigor. This act of creation ignited something deep within her. It was no longer just an extension of her anatomy but a reclamation of who she was. Each stroke reflected her determination to evolve, to rise against every betrayal and doubt, but with this surge came the confrontation she had been trying to avoid. Was she ready to confront her former friends? The thought of facing them brought forth an uncomfortable wave of anxiety. Would they understand the change in her? Would they regret their choices, or would they simply dismiss her newfound strength as another facade? With a deliberate breath, she compelled herself to look toward the future. She would face them with her head high, regardless of the outcome. Semper Fi, she reminded herself, always faithful to her truth. These obstacles had sharpened her, had whetted her ambition into something tangible. Feeling a surge of inspiration, she scrolled through her finds on social media, meticulously crafting her announcement for the mural unveiling. It would not just be a display, it would be a performance, a testament to her journey and a declaration of intent. As she uploaded the details, a thought struck her like a bolt. The real test was not just in the artistry she displayed but in her willingness to stand firm in her newfound identity. The balance of emotions weighed on her heart, fear of rejection intertwined with a fierce will to be authentic. With the evening growing darker, Sarah felt a calm settle into her bones, granting her a fleeting moment of clarity. She was alive with potential, ready to meet the challenge that awaited her. Tomorrow, when the faces of the doubters turned towards her art, she would stand unyielding. There, against the vibrant colors of her mural, she would unveil not just her work, but the very essence of who she had become. Yet, despite this clarity, doubt flickered in the back of her mind. How would she navigate the inevitable confrontation with her betrayer? As she exhaled softly, she faced that lingering curiosity. The past might still haunt her, but maybe, just maybe, this chapter was just the beginning of a bolder story waiting to be written. The dawn awaited her, filled with possibilities and potential conflict, beckoning her towards something greater. Would she emerge from it transformed, or would the shadows reclaim their hold? As dawn broke, a soft light filtered through the studio window, spilling onto Sarah's chaotic array of brushes and paints. She stirred awake, the world outside still enshrouded in a gentle haze. Today was not just another day, it was the culmination of months of emotional toil and artistic endeavor. A lump rose in her throat. Was she truly prepared for what lay ahead? The apprehensive feelings that surged through her were palpable. She felt a simmering anxiety but also an exhilarating sense of purpose. Sarah understood that the duel would not only be against her former friends but also against the insecurities that had plagued her for far too long. Yet the vivid hues of her mural beckoned her with promises of hope and renewal, urging her on. Deciding to channel her tension into something productive, Sarah returned to the smaller canvas she had been working on the night before. With each stroke, she felt her uncertainty transform into something tangible, a visual narrative, a testament to her growth. The mural was not merely a display of her artistry, it was the embodiment of her journey, struggles, and triumphs. Midway through her painting, a familiar knock resonated from her door. Startled, she paused, brush hovering over the canvas, her heart racing. It was Elena, her friend and confidant, holding a steaming cup of coffee as an offering. "You're going to need this," Elena smirked, her eyes bright with encouragement. The simplicity of the gesture eased some of Sarah's tension. As they spoke over coffee, Sarah poured out her fears, the anxieties that bubbled beneath the surface. Elena listened intently, nodding as if to absorb every word, then encouraged her to dig deeper into her emotions, to embrace the vulnerability that made her art resonate. Just then, the atmosphere shifted. The pivotal moment was approaching. Together, they reviewed the unveiling plan. Elena reminded Sarah that the most powerful art challenges perceptions and captures raw human experience. "Don't lose sight of why you started this journey in the first place," she urged, a spark of passion igniting in her voice. "You're showing people the strength in vulnerability." As the clock ticked, Sarah's conviction grew stronger. She acknowledged that while the fear of rejection thrummed beneath her skin, it coexisted with an undeniable strength. She remembered the lessons learned through every critique, every moment of self-doubt. The walls that had once confined her were slowly being dismantled, and she understood that stepping into that gallery meant stepping into her truth. Later, as the hour approached, she dressed carefully, picking an outfit that felt like armor. She would present herself as the artist she envisioned, bold and unapologetic. Staring at her reflection, she could see no remnants of the frightened girl who had once shied away from the spotlight. With each rhythmic leap of her heartbeat, anticipation shook her resolve, but there was movement, a quickening in her spirit. Out in the world, faces she'd known some betrayals, some misunderstandings would soon be turned toward her, scrutinizing her work. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying at once. Would the mural reach them in the way she intended? Would they see not only her artistry but the fighting spirit behind every brushstroke? The simplest recognition would mean more than accolades, it would mark her arrival on the other side of fear. As she stepped outside, Sarah felt the weight of the moment settle upon her shoulders, a mixture of dread and unparalleled determination. In the distance, she could see the gathering crowd. Her heart raced in reply to the nervous flutter of voices mingling in the air. The time had come, but just as she took a deep breath, preparing to face the crowd, a familiar figure appeared among the gathering. The man who had once been her closest ally and now represented a dark chapter of betrayal stood there, poised to confront her. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her, the ambition that had built within her suddenly flaring into a storm of emotions. Would she find the strength to not only present herself and her artwork but also to confront the painful past crystallized in that figure? In that moment of hesitation, the future loomed uncertain, demanding a response. How far had she really come? The crowd's chatter faded as Sarah locked eyes with Chris, the very embodiment of her struggles. The anger and betrayal they had endured weighed heavily in the air between them, a visceral reminder of everything she had worked to overcome. But beneath that initial shock was an emerging clarity. This moment was hers to shape, not just a confrontation but an opportunity for reclamation. As she took a few cautious steps toward the mural, the sea of faces seemed to blur into a single entity, all watching, all waiting. Each heartbeat felt amplified, a rhythm now fused with determination. Sarah lifted her gaze back to her work, the colors dancing in the sunlight, recalling the late nights spent painfully pouring her emotions into the canvas. Would they acknowledge the labor of love, the resurrection of her spirit? With her heart pounding, she steadied her breath, channeling the tension into her resolve. Art was her voice, and today, it would echo louder than the doubts that loomed over her. Stepping to the front of the gathered crowd, she felt a shift. This was not merely about the past, this was an exploration of her present and future, a clarion call to those willing to see. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice breaking slightly, an unguarded crack in her armor. She glanced briefly at Chris, who stood unyielding and stoic, then returned her gaze outward. "This mural represents my journey. It's about vulnerability and strength, fear and courage. It's about how we confront our fears to transform them into something beautiful." Clarity spread through her like wildfire. She owed it to herself to honor her journey, to shed the weight of the past. Each brushstroke told a story of resilience, of growth rising from the ashes of her initial despair. With each word she spoke, barriers began to dissolve. Their presence no longer felt intimidating but rather a catalyst for her evolution. Sarah pointed to various sections of the mural, recounting the emotions woven into each layer. With each explanation, her confidence burgeoned. The audience was no longer just an indifferent sea of eyes, they leaned in, captivated. She saw surprise flicker in some, recognition in others, and perhaps even understanding reflected in Chris's demeanor. For the first time in ages, she felt a spark of empowerment amidst insecurities, igniting a newfound resolve, but as she spoke, she couldn't help but glance at Chris, whose expression hinted at a mixture of regret and disdain, an outer shell of his own vulnerability. Did he know the extent of the damage he'd caused? Did he grasp how much she had grown, how she had ripped apart her fear and stitched together a vibrant tapestry of defiance? Just as she approached the climax of her emotional unveiling, Sarah noticed a movement from the corner of her eye. Elena, who had been observing closely from the sidelines, clasped her hands together in silent support. This moment was more than personal, it was about standing tall not just for herself but also confronting every doubt ever cast upon her. As she reached the finale of her speech, a sudden crack erupted within her, a blend of fury and forgiveness. I refuse to let fear of past betrayals dictate my present. I stand here not to plead for acceptance but to claim my narrative. With those words, she turned back toward Chris, the weight of her journey threading courage into her veins. I won't just be defined by what transpired between us, I am defined by what I have created. Suddenly, a ripple of murmurs washed over the crowd. The air electric with tension, a mix of exclamations and unformed thoughts surged around her. The eyes following her closely, waiting with bated breath, sensing that this unveiling transcended mere colors on a wall. Could she truly see Chris not as a tormentor but as a stepping stone towards her authenticity? As her heart raced with questions left unanswered, Sarah felt the pressure of their gazes, the calls for the next step in her journey unfolding before her. Could she find forgiveness not only for him but also for herself, to catalyze her transformation into a different artist, a different woman? The crowd stirred, and among the whispers, anticipation thickened the air like fog, the tension settling almost ominously. What awaited her next? Would she dare cross the threshold into confrontation or retreat into familiarity? The moment of truth beckoned her, urging her forward into uncharted territory. As the murmurs from the crowd enveloped her, Sarah stood at the center of a storm of emotions, teetering on the brink of her next move. The air thick with unresolved tension, she could feel all eyes on her, some seeking validation, others perhaps hoping for a confrontation. Each heartbeat thrummed in her ears, a reminder that every moment counted. She didn't just want to be seen. She needed to make her presence felt. Chris's silhouette remained an immovable object in her periphery, a stark reminder of the past she was desperately trying to navigate. There had always been a part of him that felt familiar, an anchor in a tumultuous sea. But familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort can become a prison. Sarah had freed herself from both. And now, as she glanced from the mural to Chris, the question loomed, how much further was she willing to distance herself? The colors of her mural shimmered in the sunlight, creating a cascade of vibrant hues that felt like a tangible representation of everything she had fought to reclaim. Each shade spoke of sleepless nights where she wrestled with insecurities, and bravely transforming them into artistry was a rebellion against her own fears. But here, in front of this audience, authenticity demanded more than creation. It required confrontation. With a slow exhale, she chose her words carefully. This mural isn't just about my pain, she said, her voice steadier now. It's an invitation for all of us to embrace our complexity. It's for anyone who has felt lost, as I have. Together, we can create a narrative that doesn't begin and end in betrayal but instead, blooms into something more resilient. All at once, a ripple of understanding broke across the audience. The shared vulnerability in her proclamation seemed to connect even those who stood feet apart. Elena's supportive gaze anchored her further, pushing Sarah to dig deeper into her truths. This was more than a chance for redemption, it was a revelation of who she had become, and yet, Chris remained an unresolved puzzle piece in her narrative. The feelings swirling within her were no longer just about anger, they were about liberation. Was it possible to free herself from the chains of resentment and, in turn, release him as well? She stepped closer to him, crossing an invisible boundary drawn by shared history. We cannot change what happened, Chris, but we have the power to redefine what it means for us now. Boldness surged through her, as she fought against the way his presence stirred a chaos of emotions within her. I choose to own my path, and on this canvas, I reclaim my power. When their eyes met again, she was surprised to see a flicker of vulnerability in his expression. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but in that moment, Sarah sensed a shift. Chris was more than just a source of pain, he was a fellow traveler on the road to healing. Stripped of their past, what remained? Questions pulsated in her mind. Could forgiveness be a gift she granted herself rather than a concession made to him? As this realization settled in, a pivotal shift occurred within her. The past could no longer control her, nor could it dictate her future. With each heartbeat, a sense of clarity solidified around her. She was basking in the moment of creation, not only in her art but in her life. This could be a bridge to a new reality, one where she could redefine relationships not just with Chris, but with every interaction moving forward. Tempering that growth was the weight of her own forgiveness. What would that look like? What would it cost her, in both pain and power, to truly let go? As she wrestled with these thoughts, the crowd remained a mosaic of emotions, reflecting her own inner battle. The air was thick with anticipation, and just then, she realized this confrontation wasn't merely about Chris. It was about her courage to stand at the intersection of her past and future. The crowd's gaze urging her to carve a pathway into her authenticity. In that defining moment, Sarah resolved to take the leap. The time had come to face her demons, but where would this audacious journey lead? Would she continue to build upon her art, solidifying her identity as an artist, or would she find something else along the way that changed her perspective entirely? The answers awaited her, shrouded in the uncertainty of tomorrow. As the crowd's murmurs faded to a soft hush, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. In that collective silence, she sensed an opportunity, a chance to affirm herself without the weight of Chris's past influence. She took a step back to recalibrate, the sunlight casting playful shadows across the mural, illuminating the stories etched in each brushstroke. This artwork, her creation, was a physical manifestation of her evolution. It grappled with darkness yet shimmered with hope. No longer a reflection of her suffering, it was a beacon of resilience. In that understanding, she could feel the tug of her desire to share her journey, weightier than her hesitation. She had envisioned this moment countless times, but it felt different now. She was not merely telling her story, she was embodying it. What if, Sarah thought, the idea sparking something deeper within her, what if I used this platform to redefine my narrative beyond this moment? The thought took shape, evolving from mere inspiration to a plan. Sarah glanced around, her gaze landing on individuals who mirrored the emotions she had once felt: doubt, fear, but also a flicker of hope. She had always prided herself on her ability to connect through her art, yet now she felt a need to articulate her experience verbally, to weave her story into the fabric of the lives around her. Art is about communication, she reminded herself, determination crystallizing within her. The mural spoke, but perhaps it was time for her voice to add layers, to echo the strength of her truth. I want to be unapologetically me, and I want you all to find the power in your own stories. The words slipped from her lips, sounding both foreign and invigorating. The slight shift in the audience's posture indicated she hadn't only captured their attention, she had woven them into her tapestry. Sarah exhaled, a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration quaking through her, as she faced Chris once more, but this time it was different. He was no longer a symbol of her past but an embodiment of a shared journey, a fellow wanderer along the path of understanding. You stand here witnessing my scars, but what have you learned from yours? She asked, challenging the pretext of their history without malice, only curiosity. Would her open challenge stir reflection, or further entrench him into his role as a ghost of her past? Chris shifted, the tension in his shoulders visible. There was no imminent response, only silence pregnant with possibility. In that moment, Sarah didn't feel fear, she felt empowerment. By inviting him to reflect, she held power over her narrative, choosing to mold their dynamic into something more meaningful, an opportunity for mutual growth. Then the crowd, sensing the electricity in the air, leaned in. What if this exhibition became a dialogue? She continued, emboldened by the energy of the moment. Every brushstroke tells a story, every mural represents a life lived. Let us explore these stories not just through my eyes but through each other's. Art can heal, but only if we're willing to engage. With those words, Sarah understood she was not just shedding the skin of her former self, she was forging a communal path, one laden with responsibility and reflection. What if the mural became a mirror, inviting others to project their narratives, enlarge their identities, and acknowledge their scars? The applause erupted unexpectedly, cutting through her thoughts. As she stood embraced by the warmth of their recognition, Sarah felt herself punching through the layers of doubt. She was prepared to dive deeper, to share stories not only of her triumphs but also of her failures, her insecurities, and first steps toward transformation. But with this newfound empowerment came a question she hadn't anticipated: how deep would she be willing to delve into her past, and what would she uncover about herself in doing so? As she looked into the crowd, her heart raced. Maybe Chris wasn't the only ghost haunting her. The shadows of her own fears loomed larger than she had ever acknowledged. Would the authentic exploration of her past unfurl hidden depths of her character, leaving her more exposed than ever? That thought hung in the air, tantalizing and terrifying as she contemplated the journey ahead. The applause melted into an eager anticipation, yet Sarah remained hyper-aware of the growing intensity within her. Each clap resonated like a drumbeat, pushing her closer to an awakening. The questions swirling in her mind were no longer just about Chris, they began to encompass her entire existence. Who was she now? Who could she still become? With a deep breath, Sarah stepped closer to the mural, her fingers grazing its rough surface, tracing the contours of painted emotions: grief, hope, anger. She had poured more than pigment onto that canvas, she had instilled parts of her spirit, her evolution. What will I do with this voice I have found? She thought, the weight of the moment pressing down. Let us keep the conversation going, Sarah declared, her voice strong despite the tremor beneath. I want to encourage each of you to share, to reflect. Art provides a conduit for healing, but we must brave the vulnerability together. Inviting them into her process felt daunting, yet inherently liberating. There was power in connection, in unveiling layers of challenges and triumphs. As she spoke, she saw a ripple effect take hold: people nodding in agreement, eyes wide with contemplation, others whispering to those next to them. This was not merely about her unveiling, it was an invitation for collective introspection. She felt like a lighthouse, guiding those around her through the stormy seas of their experiences. But almost immediately, dark tendrils of doubt snagged at her resolve. Was she equipped to lead others when she herself was still learning to navigate her past? She had cracked open a door to vulnerability, but what if it engulfed her in uncertainty? The question loomed as Chris stood rigid against the side of the mural, his eyes reflecting something unreadable: perhaps surprise, perhaps unease. Is this just performance? A voice called from the back. The interruption struck her, cold and unwelcome. Are you really prepared to face those scars? Or is this just another act? In that fraction of a moment, Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her. Uncertainty squeezed at her throat, but beneath her fear simmered a flicker of determination. She realized that her authenticity hinged on this very confrontation. Every time I stood before this mural, I confronted my past, Sarah answered, meeting the challenge head-on. The pain hurts, yes, but denying it only chains me to it. I choose to explore, to embrace. Maybe I'm still figuring this out, and maybe I'll stumble. But isn't that the process of growth? A hush fell over the audience again, this time charged with intensity. Her honesty struck a chord, carving a deeper connection. It became clear to her that growth wasn't merely about triumph, it was about the awkward, messy transitions, the rawness of vulnerability. As she continued to speak, Sarah surveyed the mingled expressions of those present: curiosity, skepticism, empathy. She recognized not only her own struggle but theirs. Each face was a canvas, reflecting myriad stories, all waiting to be shared. Suddenly, Chris took a hesitant step forward, as if compelled by an invisible force. "Sarah, we've both been running from our pasts," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "But maybe we could explore this together." The intensity surged within Sarah. The prospect of collaboration sent excitement coursing through her. This was not merely an interaction, it was an opportunity, a moment ripe with possibility. Could they redefine what had once been marred by pain? Yet as she registered Chris's words, a flicker of apprehension surfaced. Could she truly open herself further to someone who had once caused her so much hurt? The decision loomed large, casting shadows on the pathway ahead. "Perhaps," she whispered, uncertainty mixing with hope, "but this journey may require more than just participation, it needs raw honesty." With those words hanging in the air, her heart raced as she recognized the weight of the invitation. The next step was not just about healing but facing previously unacknowledged truths together. Would they be willing to reconcile their haunted pasts, or would old demons threaten to rip them apart again? As Sarah considered the looming dialogue ahead, she felt the brushstrokes of her transformation begin to intertwine with Chris's story. The prospect of this new chapter filled her with both trepidation and exhilaration. What if exposing their vulnerabilities led to a breakthrough both as individuals and as collaborators? The dawn of a journey into the heart of their shared struggles beckoned her quietly, and she had to decide if she was ready to step through that door. Would her next leap of faith bring liberation or chaos? The sun streamed through the studio window as Sarah stood before her completed mural, an explosion of colors and emotions that encapsulated her journey from rejection to self-acceptance. It felt surreal. Just months ago, she was drowning in the shadows of despair, self-doubt gnawing at her confidence. Now, she was prepared to face not just the world but the very insecurities she had buried for far too long. With every brushstroke on that mural, she had reclaimed fragments of herself, piecing together a vibrant narrative that echoed resilience. The time had come to unveil her creation to the community, and with it, her newfound sense of purpose. Today would mark not only her artistic recognition but the culmination of personal growth, a triumph that shed light on her path toward authenticity. As she prepared for the unveiling, memories flooded her mind. The rejection letter from the Midwest Art Academy haunted her, once a source of crippling doubt now transformed into the spark that fueled her tenacity. She reflected on standing before Mr. Thompson, that fateful meeting when she chose to carve out her identity. Each moment of vulnerability had paved the way to this opportunity to affirm her voice. Stepping into the gallery, she was greeted by an audience, an amalgamation of familiar and new faces. But amidst them, Chris stood, his presence a bittersweet reminder of the past, yet also a symbol of her evolution. Their earlier confrontation had marked an awakening, a shift that sparked clarity in how she perceived her story going forward. The weight of her doubt faded as she locked eyes with him, realizing that her growth was not merely about proving herself to others, it was about declaring her worth to herself. "Welcome, everyone," Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. "Today, I invite you to witness not just a mural, but a manifestation of resilience, vulnerability, and hope. Every color, every stroke reflects a part of my journey, and I hope it resonates with you as profoundly as it does with me." As she spoke, she could feel the energy in the room transform. The audience leaned in, captivated not just by her art, but by the authenticity radiating from her words. They were not mere spectators but participants in a vital dialogue about overcoming doubt and reigniting the flame of creativity. She gestured toward the mural, recounting her story, the heartaches, the betrayals, and the triumphs that had shaped her. "Art is where I found my voice, where I fought against the tide of negativity," she continued. "It has taught me that our scars are not markers of defeat, they are reflections of our survival, our incessant will to grow." After the unveiling, a sense of recognition washed over Sarah as murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. They connected with her message, her vulnerability had forged an invisible thread of shared experience. The applause that followed felt overwhelming. She stood taller, the echoes of their appreciation resonating deep within her, but powerful recognition didn't come solely from her art. Chris approached her with a tentative smile, the tension that had once defined their relationship now dissipating. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," he began, his voice earnest. "Our past, it does not have to define us." We've both grown. Sarah felt a weight lift, his acknowledgement signaled the beginning of an unexpected partnership, one neither had anticipated. "Perhaps there's room for collaboration," she replied, a spark of excitement igniting within her. "Together, we can explore what healing through art truly means." Their conversation transformed from remnants of betrayal to a shared mission, bridging the gap forged by misunderstandings. This collaboration wasn't about erasing the past but using it as a foundation for mutual growth. They were both artists shaped by experiences, each stroke of their lives intertwined. As the day waned, Sarah found herself grounded in a newfound confidence. She had achieved what she set out to prove. She wasn't just an artist, she was a force, a woman who had transformed pain into purpose. No longer did she require external validation, she was enough, standing proud beside the mural, a testament to her journey, her resilience echoing into the future. In the weeks to come, Sarah's art attracted attention from local galleries, igniting opportunities she had once only dreamed of. Each exhibition became a platform not only for her work but also for conversations around creativity, authenticity, and the beauty of embracing vulnerability. She had conquered her fears and propelled herself into a recognized space, celebrated for her artistry and the narrative that fueled it. As she stood before her mural once more, reflecting on how far she had come, Sarah realized that her story was not solely hers. It was shared, it inspired, and most importantly, it was an invitation for others to reclaim their narratives as well. This was her moment, one she had fought for, embraced, and ultimately, achieved. "Art is not just what I produce," she whispered to herself with unwavering conviction. "It is who I am now and forever." Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation like Sarah's. You have the power to show your support by leaving a like now to help spread her journey, feeding the algorithm for others to witness this incredible moment. Remember to comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's profound evolution. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.